Only few words about who we are. So we are a digital and innovation consultancy. Our roots are in the Nordics. We are already 18 years old. So basically we started as a software company. A bunch of these weirdos get together. They started actually creating their own product. I think it was pre-Facebook, but then Finland is not really well known of marketing skills, so we kind of lost it for Facebook. But the engineering skills were top notch. So then we started to consult different companies, and over the time, basically companies were also asking about, all right, not only to build new services and digitalize their systems, but also actually how are we working, like to coach a little bit these ways of working, our culture, which is very flat and agile. We try to be cross-functional and so forth. So this is kind of our core. So still building the digital services, but also thinking about how to transfer companies within. Over the years we have grown, so we are already 550 plus people in 5 countries. So I'm from Finland, but actually never worked in our headquarters in Helsinki. So my story went directly to Munich. So we established an office in Munich 3 years ago, and that's where my story is. But that's maybe enough about Futurice. We are also, yes, hiring, just to mention. We have those people there just that if you want to chat about and know more about the company. Yeah? But then let's go a little bit on my background before I hop immediately to the topic. But yeah, so already mentioned Nadja from Finland. My background is actually from corporations. I used to work for energy, one of the biggest energy companies in the Nordics. So really understanding the corporate dynamics is kind of my background. But then I started to get interested in design. So I'm a business person or business background, whatever you want to call it. But then I got to know service design and creative industries. I really fell in love, and then I was meeting Futurice, and that was kind of like match made in heaven, and that got me into Germany, like mentioned in Munich. And I don't know if you know anything about Munich, except the big beers that they have there. They have the big cars in Bavaria in general as well. So I got to kind of know this world of automotive quite deeply, and now the last 2 years I have been working with BMW and many of the other big kind of car manufacturers. And I think like why I wanted to have this topic was beginning of my story was a little bit like naive when I was entering this mobility world. When I was going to BMW, for instance, I was really coming from this digital point of view that let's build these cool and sexy services for the end customers that are maybe car sharing, whatnot. That is part of the story that they need, but actually the problems are somewhere else. So I, as a role of business designer, my kind of responsibility is also to have empathy for the organizations and take a look basically what are the real challenges that they are having. Not only what kind of challenges are customers having, end consumers, but what challenges is the company having really, and understanding the power dynamics, the strategy behind it. So this is kind of my story and my observations from the 3 years now working with these mainly German giant manufacturers. Like how do we see the future of mobility, and how do we see basically how to tackle those challenges? How complex is the environment there, if that makes sense? All right, so this is kind of like a multiplied case stories in one. So I want to go kind of through different topics and how we have seen basically companies coping with that. But before I actually hop, how many of you are designers, just to get an understanding? Quite many, but not everybody. So what about techies? Whatever that means. All right, and others, significant others. Anybody from mobility? Yeah, anybody from mobility, working closely or been involved within mobility topics? All right. Okay, cool. Yeah, let's have a chat afterwards as well. And I really want for all of you guys to think about from design or technical point of view, how would you help these companies? So, okay, let's start with the most obvious examples and kind of not trends, but topics. So climate change, nothing surprising there, but super difficult topic to tackle basically. And what does it really mean for the OEMs? This is what we call kind of these original car manufacturers. So what does it mean for the companies? It's really, the emissions are kind of core of the climate change. And this is the real problem that they are having. So this is something that I didn't really realize in the beginning of my story, that this is actually what they're battling with. So emissions has been tested and controlled over the years, but basically because nowadays we are paying more attention to the nature and climate change. And also, if you remember, a few years ago we had the Dieselgate scandal with Volkswagen. Doesn't ring a bell. So those kind of scandals were actually, at the end of the day, quite good. So new regulations for emissions were introduced a few years ago, and this is all good for the nature. But actually, thinking about from corporation point of view, this is the shit that they are really struggling with. So, for instance, Daimler said that it's taking twice as long time to implement these regulations than previously. This affected, for instance, that Volkswagen Group, this huge group, suffered 53% sales decrease last year. So imagine that you would have 53% less revenue money to do the cool stuff for future. So this is really the reality in the companies. This is what they are battling about. Then the next up is, no surprise, electrification as well. This is not a new word, I assume, for anybody, but from companies' perspective, it's about like, all right, we have this push from regulation, from countries, from everybody to have electrified vehicles. And then, so basically currently we are having something of 3 million electrified vehicles in the market, but soon, in 10 years or so, we're having 250 million. So that also puts pressures to the companies how to produce this. And the second point of view from company is that it's opening up the market. So basically there are new players, not only Teslas, but there are basically this Ego, for instance, a German startup who wants to make affordable small EVs for general public. And this is just the point that they need to think about, that we have had always the power. What to do now with this market opening up? Then, still continue with the kind of normal topics, it's the autonomous driving. This is the big thing that everybody is trying to think about, like who is winning the game, nothing surprising there. But I think it's a long game. So even though everybody is hassling and talking so much about it, even for the companies, it's sitting in the core of their strategy, but it's a long game. So actually there is no quick victories there. So you need to be able to kind of plan that thing coming up, but still support the company while it's going towards it. It's also about imagine how much data you need in order to actually make this happening. So it's a question mark for the companies. Do they need to partner up, or can they actually deliver this on their own? BMW, being a very conservative company, has opened up their kind of platform for development. And it's actually an interesting question for all of you as well. Should this be a societal challenge? Should this be actually something that we all support or not? Only the car manufacturers. Then I think this is naturally from the previous topic as well, as AI is in the core kind of on the self-driving cars, then the question is who manages not the cars production anymore, but the software, the production, the creating new ones, and anyway, the ownership. Who is owning and playing the game? And as designers as well, this is an interesting question. Is it in-house? Is it coming from partnership? Where is it coming? And even more importantly, maybe this data protection. This is again nothing new, but this is really these core topics that they are struggling with. And I think from thinking about these giants companies' point of view, we see them sometimes slow and traditional, maybe even overprotective with the data compared to China and compared to Tesla in the US or something like that. But it might be actually at the end of the day good to be conservative, and they might be actually, this might be their competitive advantage later when the trust for the car and for the company behind also becomes the core value. And it's a more question for you guys. What kind of companies do you really trust? And it's not only about the software, but actually when the car drives you, are you willing to put yourself at BMW brand or Nissan or whoever that is? That becomes the critical kind of question. And how do you build that trust? Still on the core car itself, just wanted to point out the lifecycle management is really important topic for all of us to kind of think about it. So the average time of producing a car takes 5 years from designing it and launching it. And whereas the services inside the car, behind it or besides it or beyond the car, they are something that we can develop this fast and release this fast. The problem also for designers is that when the car is actually ready to be launched, some of the critical decisions were made like years ago. So and there are some technical limitations when the car is coming to market. So that is why sometimes, I don't know, if you're sitting behind the car and you are thinking about why this is really like sticky and not working. It's really how to match those two complete different streams together so that we can still, have a good user experience. The problem also, just a good kind of like good to understand, usually these kind of units who are making services and who are actually making the car, they sit completely in different organizational silos. And this makes it completely difficult to discuss with them and actually make a user experience good. But finally, moving a little bit behind the car or in front of the car. So we all here are kind of users somehow of mobility, whether it's cars or just transportation. So our needs are changing. Also, what we expect from mobility itself, the touch points, the channels, and so forth, as well as our role as a whether we are users or whether we are owners. So it's not anymore so that everybody buys a car and then we become an owner, but it's really about combination of sharing our assets, being a user or owner. And if you think about, again, from company's point of view, when you're designing a user journey, it's not anymore linear. It's actually this intertwined ecosystem which is hard to manage because you need to be able to design it from, okay, somebody being a user becomes an owner and then becomes again the user. How do you manage this ecosystem? This is really also something that we are usually helping the companies with, and it's not so straightforward topic. How many, by the way, owns a car? Oh, a lot. Oh, cool. I thought that 2. Okay, cool. Then with the new roles of this customer, it's also about companies need to think about new business models. So we are not anymore, okay, some of you were willing to buy a car, but actually then many of us are thinking about leasing a car for shorter time of period, or then even subscribing, or not anymore. I think like there is a lot of potential for companies, but thinking of, again, from companies' point of view, how do they forecast their revenues? It was super easy in the old days. It was about selling X amount of cars, maintenance, done deal. Now it's really about, how do we take into account in this like volatile market and different kind of models? All right, then the question is also, what kind of role do these companies, and they should, play in the ecosystem of mobility? Who is kind of controlling this movement of people and traffic and whatnot from A to B? So it's really a question for the car manufacturers. Are they going to be providers or are they going to be orchestrators? This affects to their whole strategy quite a lot. And I think interestingly, that I found at least interesting was that BMW and Mercedes, for instance, they had their own mobility services like charging, parking, car sharing stuff, and they are very well-known brands. So I thought that the reach of them is pretty good, and we are working a lot with the mobility services with them. But then actually last year they needed to emerge together to have a joint venture because they didn't have a successful basically mobility ecosystem on their own. So even these major brands need to basically emerge. This is also kind of like showing maybe some direction. All right, and kind of I want to push you even further a little bit and mess up the complexity even a bit down the line. So it's not only about the car and the services that they need to think about what's the strategy, then it's actually also about when we're pushing more and more vehicles into market, who is controlling and owning the traffic? It would be a natural role for them, for these car manufacturers, to take some kind of partnership there, but actually, are they already too late? Alibaba in China, in Kuala Lumpur, they are controlling the traffic there. So it's really a big question as well. Who is gonna, what's their role? What's anybody's role in this? And who should have the role? Same goes to logistics. So as more we are starting to order stuff to our home, as more people we have in this planet, how to handle this logistics. And I think so far, these car manufacturers, they have been very much focused on their own streams, but not necessarily on the logistics. So this is just a question that they need to think about. Do they play a role or not? Then interesting for, at least from my part, is also this urban versus countryside topic. So mobility, it has been very much focused on urban areas, smart cities, whatnot. What happens in the countryside? What happens beyond the cities? Who connects the cities together? Who is creating the connectivity, the transportation system, other than this tractor there? So it's really about, okay, there is other life there as well beyond the cities. Then going to the question of where do you focus your effort? So basically, do you want to play a role in cities, in countries that are already being done? So infrastructure is already done. It means also that regulations are already done and there. Whereas, are you more open and more experimental? Do you want to focus on locations that are ready to change? And kind of same topic from different angle, it's about where is our population going to be? I'm very proud European and love Europe, but Europe is an old lady. We're getting fewer and fewer and also older, whereas actually 70% of the population already now, they are in Asia, in Africa. And the question here is that it doesn't, it's not okay to have only one strategy that fits to both market. So it's also about a little bit focusing where do you want to be present. And from, again, different angle, the question is about the openness and the nature of the society. So whereas maybe in Europe, we are very democratic, we try to align, take different kind of opinions into consideration. It makes us also very slow sometimes when it comes to innovation observation. Whereas if you go to China, they, as you know, they are very fast, and this is great kind of playing field for innovations. But, so it's a kind of like question also, is it only about the business, or how is ethics playing a role? So, and it's not, for instance, it's also actually elderly people. So for me, it feels like mobility as a general theme. It's very much inviting these new generations and younger people. But what about elderly people? Who is really taking care of that and designing this mobility ecosystem or like future for them as well? So it's really balancing what's your ethical approach. And last point from this one is basically the production. So we are producing this shiny new world with shiny machines. But what do you do with the used cars? Like, are these companies really taking a look at their value stream and thinking about where do they get the resources? What is their strategy for energy usage? Are they having partnerships there? Just to kind of like, and this is a topic that is increasing of importance. Companies know that, but this is just something that they haven't yet maybe discovered completely. So just to kind of loads of different words, lots of different kind of topics. I just wanted to kind of give you this overall view of the complexity that these companies need to actually think about. And I want to also later have a discussion with you how might we as the designers to kind of approach this. And I want to leave you guys with few potential strategic options that they could, what kind of route do they could take basically in future. And option one is really focusing on your core. So I know sometimes we talk so much about in innovation, disrupting everything. Yes, we are disrupting everything, that's all good. But also there is a reason why, for instance, these German and any other country as well, all these giant manufacturers, they are so good what they are doing. They have been hundreds and hundreds years there. They are very, like, the world's best in engineering. They have optimized the value chain of the whole car production to so perfectionism. It's very hard to compete. Tesla, for instance, is like struggling with mass production. So what about just accepting what is your core and adapting it a bit? You could become a white label provider or other solutions, but just thinking about what is it that you can, nobody else can take it from you, at least. All right, option 2 is more about portfolio diversification. So basically thinking about what you put to the market. So yes, currently it's a little bit like that. Either you're a passenger or you're just creating vehicles. But what happened with the needs of the environment or the countryside? There is going to be new needs for transportation. So why not kind of using your core and diversify a little bit the portfolio? Go to the logistics and find new opportunities there. Option number 3 is some kind of alliances and partnerships. So Volkswagen is a good example here. So as mentioned before, they were actually opening up their platform that is very crucial for them to new players, to completely new car manufacturers to come, plug and play, take their data and develop new cars. And I think this is kind of win-win for both parties. And too often we see kind of companies being these lonely islands. Last one is really thinking about new markets. So thinking about adjacent markets, for instance, this is a case of a Toyota. So they were really taking their core DNA and their engineering capabilities, thinking about other industries where there is like enough demand for such an excellent engineering skills. And this was actually robotics. And then they changed their line of business to expand there as well. So they could actually use their people, their machines, their know-how to kind of shift a little bit the market focus. These are only few examples, just to give you an idea. But I think the main point here is about understanding the complexity and then being able to focus. So just want to leave you guys with kind of like, again, still being from the corporate point of view, kind of different playboxes or whatever you want to call it, of what elements you need to have. So you need to have a very strong global corporate strategy that is giving you some direction and saying we go here, we don't go here and there. But then the problem has been that usually this is looking world for 15 years from now on, but changes are happening so fast. So all these companies must become much better at this strategy process. So how can we take these changes happening into account faster? And there I think we all kind of externals can help companies. Then it's about partnership ecosystems. Again, thinking about who are value-adding partners? How attractive are you as a player? What are the business models that you see that you want to focus on, and who could support there? You cannot in this world anymore build everything alone. Then I think mergers and acquisitions is a part of company and strategy that's always been there. But I think here the key point is really, again, the focusing. What's your core? What can you sell? What do you need to buy? And kind of how attractive are you as a company for others? So really thinking about from this angle. And then finally it goes for what kind of organization do you have and do you need? So this kind of like, this is a messy picture, but it's just showing a little bit of what are the different aspects, and I'm trying to also kind of like give my empathy back to the corporations that it's not an easy job what they are having there. But yeah, thank you. This is me for hopefully something like 20 minutes in time. And hopefully I gave you a little bit perspective, and also hopefully you have a bit like empathy that, oh, what a hard job, yeah, that they are having. Thank you.